So I want to talk a little bit about what transformative coaching really is, or what a transformative conversation is, at least in the way that I understand it. And really, a transformative conversation is about impact. Okay, it's a transformative conversation is not just a normal conversation. It is a conversation where, as a result of us talking, something happens that wouldn't have happened without the conversation, or you at least see something about the nature of life or yourself or your mind that you didn't see before the conversation. And as a result of you seeing it, it makes positive, impactful differences in either how you show up in the world or how you relate to something. And essentially what we're talking about here is two things. It's your performance, the results that you can create in your life, which I call the outer game. Like, we all want what I call outer success. We all want certain things, and that's the outer game. That's what I mean when I say performance and results creation. And then there's the inner game as well. And the inner game is more than just it's more than just our well-being. It's the amount of clarity that we have access to. It's how in touch we are with our own innate wisdom, our own genius, if you like. It's more than how good we feel. It's how creative we are when it comes to solving challenges and when obstacles in our way. So it's two things. Transformative coaching is about upping your performance, upping the results you can create in life, and it's about upping your inner game as well, your inner world, so that you're feeling how you want to feel all the time. And that feels good. But it means that when you're in love with life, when you're in that flow state, you're bound to create more results, because when you're not in that state and you're in some kind of like frustration or burnout or stress or overwhelm, or at least some sort of resistance, you're not going to perform well. Like, no one does. I mean, coaching kind of came from working with sports people. Like, I work with a couple of athletes, but that's not the majority of who I work with. I tend to work with people that want to squeeze a little bit more juice from their life. They know that they can get more out of life. Maybe you've clicked on this because you're feeling a little bit unfulfilled, or a bit stressed, overwhelmed, burnout, or you know that you can just get a bit more from yourself or from life. That's what coaching is about, is helping you get away from those things that you say that you don't want and get into creating a life that you love, whatever that looks like to you. And I want to talk about something that I found really helpful. And when I studied psychology since, well, for the last 18 years. And I worked as a senior lecturer on a professional master's psychology program, teaching psychology students, and everything I knew about how we work. And this is what this is about, is how do we really work? So when we understand how we work, we know how to get the best out of ourselves. It's like, if you've ever taken apart anything to find out how it works, that's what this is about. Maybe as a kid you had a radio or a toy that was broken, so you took it apart to see how it worked. That's what we're doing now. We're looking at how we really work, how our mind really works, how our brain really works, and how life really works. Because there's a lot of common misunderstandings. You know, it's like, there used to be this myth that we only use 10% of our brain. That's not true. We use all of our brain. There's lots of myths about how we think life works. And this is what we're going to look at today. So I have a metaphor for this, which I really like and I use quite a lot. And I call this the game of life. I think of life as a game to be played. And quite recently, I was away on an extended family holiday, and my brothers came, and my sister came, and my dad came, and we sat down to play this new board game. And it was a great game. It's called Code Breakers, if you want to have a look. And me and my brothers, my sister, and our partners and things were playing really well. It soon became evident that my dad wasn't doing so well. And we stopped for a minute and said, "Dad, what are you doing? You're losing every time." And he said, "Well, I don't know how the game works." Because my dad was absent when we sat down to read the instructions. We all took 20 minutes or so to sit down before the game started to understand how the game worked. And my dad was distracted. when we re-explained to him how the game really works, he performed much better. And it really strikes me how little I used to know about how the game of life really worked. And so I didn't perform so well. And whenever I'm working with a client, there's always some misconception about what's going on and how life really works. So this is a conversation about the game of life. And probably one of the most helpful things that I've discovered that is relevant to our performance and our well-being is that we can't have peak performance and we can't feel at our best when we're too focused on problems. When we're in such a survival mode that all we're focusing on is the things that we don't want, we have no time to create what we do want. The thing is with this is there's generally really only two types of motivation. There's two types of energy. There's the type of motivation, the type of energy where you're focused on what you don't want. And this is just called an away from motivation. It's very much a survival mode. It's a reactive state where all you're doing is you're focusing on avoiding what you don't want to happen. And it's a very low intelligence place to be. I mean, it makes sense to be there sometimes. If someone was running after you in a threatening manner, I would want to be in that state of motivation. But it leaves no space for creativity, for wisdom, for creating the results that you say that you do want. Because when you look at a reactive survival mode versus an inspired possibility mode, in other words, this mode is what you do want to create. You want to create more love in your life, more joy, more fulfillment, better connection in relationships, more money, whatever it is you say you want. If you're so busy focused on all this stuff over here, there's no room to create this. This is the world of possibility and potential and opportunity and top results. And you can't create that when you're running away from things. So that's the first thing to understand. The other thing to understand is where these blocks come from. In other words, if you are feeling stressed or overwhelmed or unfulfilled or burnt out or just pressure or even discouragement because maybe you've been trying to create some results but it hasn't worked yet, then you're feeling discouraged. We want to see where that experience is coming from. And here's where we get stuck. It really looks like that experience is coming from the situation. And maybe the situation is a bunch of conditions that you could describe and we could get all objective about that. But that has nothing to do with what you're thinking and feeling in the moment. It's like there's two domains in life. There's the situation and then there's our experience, which is made up of our thoughts and our feelings. And these two, although they look like they're married, they're really not. There is independence there. And we marry these two up, we collapse the two, we treat them as if they are one and the same. And this happens automatically in our mind. We don't do it, it does it for us. So I'll give you an example of the time I saw this the most clearly, and I'll give you a few more examples as well. I remember many years ago I was having going through a relationship breakup, and I was really struggling with it. And I went to, he was a meditation teacher, you could call him a coach. And I looked at him and I must have had such pain in my eyes. And I said to him, what do I do? You know, I've lost the love of my life and I've lost my house and my dog and, you know, all our friends. And what do I do? I'm stuck, I'm lost. And he looked at me and he said, what are you adding to it? And in that moment, my mind exploded and I realized the source of all my suffering was what I was adding to the situation. What I was adding to it was, I'll never love again. That's it. I've lost my one shot at happiness. What's wrong with me? Why didn't this work out? And a whole bunch of other stuff. And in that same moment, I was free. Like, I still felt a little bit sad but my whole experience changed because I saw the separateness from the situation and my experience, what I was adding to it through my thinking. And in that moment, I saw that there's always two things going on simultaneously, always, situations and our experience. And whenever a client comes to me, they bring what they think is the situation, and they'll be pretty clear about that. And what they inevitably do is they also share their thinking about it and their feelings about it, because it's very tricky for us to see that we collapse the two, that we marry the two up, and that they are separate. And when we're talking about peak performance and getting the best out of our life and feeling good, it's really helpful to see the difference. Like, you can't have stress without thought. Stress is not inherent in a situation. It's our thinking that does that. You can't have overwhelm without thought. You can't have discontent or discouragement without thought. So in a way, our experience is entirely thought created. We live in a thought created reality where we're experiencing our thinking. I remember the very first time I saw this in life, and it really got me interested into psychology and how we work. And I was working in my local pub at age 15. I was washing up to earn some cash on the side. And it was a very busy weekend evening, and there was two chefs that were cooking. And there was one chef that was just so stressed and overwhelmed. And I remember she was flustered and red and sweaty, and there was a lot of shouting and swearing going on because there was food orders flying out of the till. And there was another chef who treated the whole thing as a joke. And he was laughing and giggling and kind of dancing around the kitchen. And I noticed, because it really struck me, that they were having two entirely different experiences in the same situation. And I even pointed out to someone else, and they were like, oh yeah, but they're just messing around, like she's doing all the work. And I watched, because that got me even more curious, because that wasn't my experience, that wasn't my observation. And I watched, and actually what struck me was that he seemed like he was being more productive than the other chef. He was in the zone, he was in the flow state. And she was getting flustered and dropping things and panicking and spending a lot of time in her head. And when I tie that with what I've learned now in my psychology training and my coaching training, I realized what was going on. There was the situation. They had 200 dinners to cook, whatever it was. It probably was about that. And then there was what they were making it mean. There was their interpretation. There was their thought created reality. And what they were experiencing is not the 200 meals to cook. It was their thinking. And we're always experiencing our thinking. We just can't see that at the time. And that is why a transformative conversation is helpful, because it helps you get less and less caught up in your thinking and more in a very natural and easily accessible state of flow, of clarity, of creativity, of action, of wisdom. I mean, if you think about what you would like to create in the world, like what do you really, really want? If thought wasn't getting in the way of that, what would you just go and naturally do? Where would your heart lead you? Where would your energy, your passion lead you? What action would you take? And that's what this conversation's about, so that you can do what comes naturally to you, so you could be present, so you can squeeze that last little drop out of every scenario in life, so that you can be at your best all the time, and you're living in that world of possibility where you can create what you say that you would love to create. So that's a little bit about what a transformative conversation's like. We help you get out of those stuck points, those blind spots where you on some level maybe know it's your thinking that's getting in the way, but you can't see it. and we get you into that natural state of flow, of action, of creativity, of enjoyment, of fulfillment, of love even. And if you'd like to learn more, there's many ways we can continue this conversation.